Are you a sexy, indulgent musician suffering from consistent long hours, crippling self-doubt, and constant disappointment? Well, do we have a show for you?
Sex, drugs, and disappointment. Sex, drugs, and disappointment. Sex, drugs, and disappointment.
Welcome to Sex, Drugs, and Disappointment, a bi-weekly deep dive into what it takes to be a healthy and successful musician in the modern industry. My name is Melody Kaiser.
And I'm Dustin Williams.
And we are both full-time musicians and creative entrepreneurs. And today we are discussing some songwriting tips and techniques.
For musicians, songwriting is often a step that comes maybe later in their musical development. However, it is a great way to learn about yourself as a musician, lyricist, and overall person, really. And it's arguably one of the best forms of musical expression, where you really get to just it's your story. You get to make all the decisions. And while there is definitely not a right or a wrong way to create or write songs, we decided we'd compile some helpful tips that we've used for us to help write songs and to stay creative, and hopefully it'll help you too.
Yeah. So I think, this is my opinion on it, I think that a lot of people feel really intimidated by songwriting, both on the musical side and on the lyrical side of it. A lot of people, I feel like, just don't believe that they have the ability to create something like that within themselves, which, I mean, honestly, some people may not. But I think for the most part, pretty much anybody can write a song.
Yeah.
And your first song probably won't be your best song that you're ever going to write. And that's okay. Thankfully, nobody has a gun to your head telling you to write a song. So,
in most cases,
I don't know. Your life may be way more interesting than mine. But, just look at it as like a growth process. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to work on it just like you did practicing your instrument or your vocals or anything else like that. Mm-hmm. Dustin, what would you say is kind of let's talk about headspace and kind of setting the mood and the environment. What helps you when you go to write a song or be creative? Because it's very different than your headspace when you're trying to practice something technical or
absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely different if I'm just working on scales or something. But yeah, if I'm writing, so a big thing for me is physical environment. And I've mentioned this kind of in the previous episode, and I think our first one, how setting the right environment can really help you be more productive. Again, that's your physical space. It's how you set up your gear, how the room looks, the lighting, things like that are really important for me, I guess. And I didn't used to think that was the case. Right. But, and it's not it has to be this perfect setting. I should clarify too. I obviously I can be driving down the road and start songwriting in my head. And, so it just really depends on the environment. I think, if my mind is really cluttered or overfilled with a lot of stuff, though, it's definitely harder for me to write. Even being a session player, if I'm doing a new gig, maybe that I haven't really done as much, it's a new band, new material, I'm usually shedding that a lot more in the early days, just to get comfortable with the material. And when I do that, sometimes it's my creative capacity is kind of taken up in that space.
Sure. Yeah. I could see that.
And part of it is I think because at least in my situation, a lot of the time when I do play with other people, they might have recordings that have bass lines on them, but most people are get the general foundation and then kind of do your thing with it. So I get to be creative with that. So it's still in a way, fulfilling some of that songwriting, desire, I guess, because I'm writing a part that I think suits the music. And even if it's not going to be recorded, for the live show, I feel more connected to it when I do stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And going back to what you were talking about is it comes in different ways. That's definitely true for me. There have been moments where I sit down to finish an idea that I had. Usually how it starts for me, though, is I'll because I just sing a lot. It annoys everybody else, I'm sure, but I just like, I'm the kind of person, like when I'm cooking, I'm like, I got the butter and now I'm putting butter in the pan and now it's like that's me.
It's great.
It's me.
I love it.
So like I do that all the time. So I will every once in a while have an idea that's better than that. And for me, it's really important. Like I need to record it in my phone as a voice memo, like right then.
Yeah.
Because even if I stand there and keep singing it, by the time I'm 5 minutes in, it's totally different than when I started singing it. Like all of a sudden it's like swung tempo and like, sounds like a Billie Holiday song or something. Right. So that's really important for me, is like, as soon as you have an idea, even if it's not what you consider good or like developed, I think it's important just to at least document it. Because, and I've heard stories about some of the most famous, best songs in the world. I think this may be wrong, but I think Billie Jean, they did like 40 takes of like the vocals, and then they ended up going with take 2.
Really?
And it's just like, so like, that happens a lot.
It definitely does. Yeah.
So you're thinking like, oh, well, I think it could be better or different. And then you get all of your ideas out and you're like, oh no, like the first one was probably the best one. Yeah. But it's important to get all of them down, I think. So that's really important for me. I try to voice memo everything. And you know that because we've written songs together, and like literally I'll be like, and I'm like, all right, I need to voice memo this.
Where were we the other day? Where was it? Oh, it was when we were hanging out and you were making that Cajun pasta. Yeah. And we went to Kroger to go get some of the stuff for it. And you were like walking down the aisle singing into your phone. And I'm like,
it's a thing. And it's not even like always vocal lyrical stuff. Like sometimes I'm just like, I want the drums to go do 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 do. Like and sometimes I go back and listen to them and I'm like, wow, that was garbage. That was the worst idea you've ever had. But I wouldn't know if I didn't get it down.
Well, yeah. Well, so. and I think, speaking of Michael Jackson, I could also be mistaken here, but I've heard that a lot of the time he would come into the studio with ideas, and he would just lay down like beatbox and like vocal instrumental, essentially, so that he can reference them to people later. Yeah. Because he didn't really play like physical instruments, so that was kind of his way of
I mean, yeah, I do know. Yeah. And that's something, that I kind of wanted to bring up too. Like, just to write a song, you don't have to be like an instrumentalist, or, you definitely don't have to be a great instrumentalist. Like, you can know like a basic idea. I mean, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac is, for the most part, 2 chords the whole time. Yeah. So like, you don't have to be, and that's one of the best songs of all time. So it's like, you don't have to be like amazing just to like write a song. But also there are lots of resources. Say that you clicked on this episode because you are really interested in songwriting, but you don't know how to play anything. Well, like one of the great things about songwriting and just kind of music in general is a lot of songs are kind of the same. Like they're the same chord progressions. They're the same, whatever. You try not to copy the same melody, but we'll get into that later. But like a lot of songs are the same. So there are resources. You can just go to YouTube and look up like backing tracks. And they're basically just like common chord progressions and like a band's playing to them. And you could write your lyrics to that.
That's actually very true.
And it would be like a legit song, because like most songs, not most songs, but a lot of songs like do kind of follow the same chords.
Yeah. So, arrangement is really where things start to change. Right.
Yeah. So don't feel like you aren't capable of doing that just because you don't know how to play an instrument. Because there are like a lot of like internet resources out there to kind of help you with that part of it. And that's not even mentioning, like there are places like Fiverr and stuff like that where you can pay, and it's on different scales. Some of them are really cheap. Like you can pay somebody $5 to like write the music to your song. Yeah. I doubt for $5 it's going to be great, but you get the gist. Like there are things that you can do. So don't let that deter you, because there are plenty of people out there who have written amazing songs that didn't know how to play instruments.
Speaking of the the thing you were mentioning about like, pulling up a backing track video on YouTube or something like that's what I would consider maybe like a writing exercise, right? And you were telling me recently about a writing exercise that you do, like a thought flow thing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So I am definitely, I've learned this about myself. I'm not the kind of person where like I can just follow like a rhyme scheme or like a feel and like write amazing lyrics. That's just not.
I mean, that's hard.
Yeah, I'm not great at it. Like I can come up with like rhymey words, but
Sure.
they're usually not great because I'm just like, what rhymes with time? Dime.
Yeah.
Like I need to write this song about money. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's just stupid. So,
but maybe that's for some people. That's how they write. So,
oh yeah, yeah. But like,
works.
I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there are some people out there that are amazing at it, but I can't do that. So, kind of how I've done it is if I have a topic, that I know what I want to write my song about, I just have like a free flow paragraph form. I just like word vomit the whole thing. So, say I want to like, this song I want to be about depression. So like I will, literally just like paragraph form, like, today was a hard day, addiction pills, blah, 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 and I'll just like free form anything that comes to mind. I'll just write it out. And so, from that, I'll have that at the top of the paper. And then from that, now I can like, look, were there any like good ideas first? And then are there any ideas that would flow and rhyme? How could I put them together in a way that kind of tells more of a story? So that has worked for me. I've written several songs that way.
I think that's really cool because it keeps you from putting yourself in a box where you're forced to write, like you said, like a particular rhyme scheme or a particular, like you can figure that out later if you do want to make more of a rhyme or more of like a, A, B, A, C kind of situation. But like, just getting the initial idea out. I mean, writers, like novel writers talk about it all the time about like, they force themselves to sit down every day and write. And even if it's one word, it's still something. Right. So it's just like habitual creativity, which we've also talked about before.
I mean, and I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
And so speaking of that, something that I learned to do in college, like every single lyric writing, songwriting thing I did in college, this was like a daily part of the class. You had to do like a daily discussion post, basically. And so what it was called object writing. So every day they gave you an object in the class, but if you're not taking the class, basically every day you just pick an object, and the weirder it is, the better it actually is. So like refrigerator, you just like, and you give yourself different times. So like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, it just depends on what you feel like in that moment. And like, how long can you talk about a refrigerator? But you'd be surprised because if you force yourself, like I have to continually write for 10 minutes, like it starts with just like cold, ice, freezer, food. And then by the end of it, you're like, Frigidaire, industrialism,
capitalist,
racism, and that,
it just
so
goes in all,
by the end of it, you're like, whoa, like we got way off.
How the hell did I end up here? Yeah.
From refrigerator. But it's actually pretty cool. And some objects are obviously like refrigerator would be a hard one for me, but some objects you'd actually be surprised about. Yeah. Because they may like trigger like a sentimental memory, and then before you know it, you're like writing about your granddad and how he loved to take you fishing, and so it's really cool. And they obviously advise you to do it every single day. I'm not great. I don't do it every single day.
Well,
but
I was gonna say though, I feel like it's almost more like a controlled version of something that happens to probably a lot of people, which is just when you're doing something. I can't speak for anybody but myself, but I know like if I'm more idle, or if I'm doing something that's less like intellectually stimulating, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, stuff like that, spilling coffee on my leg, like because there's such like menial tasks, your brain flows places, and mine does anyway. So like, I can be washing dishes and then just have this like intense emotion coursing through me because I'm thinking about some like serious situation, you know, that I'm dealing with or was dealing with like years ago. And because my mind has nothing else to do other than I need to get this dried up piece of chicken off of this plate, like, you know what I mean?
I do.
So, so I think it's actually like, for those of you listening who are like, oh, I don't know if I can be like in that form of free thought, like you probably do it a lot. And this is just like the written version of it. It's like just writing down, you know, when people say like write your dreams down, it's kind of the same thing, right?
Right. And I will say too, like generally they do advise you, and I don't know who they is, but like I've heard my whole life, like try to like handwrite it, because typing is obviously a lot faster, but a lot of times your brain doesn't work as fast as you want to type. So like with handwriting, like it kind of is slow enough where you can actually have like really thought out thoughts, basically. And it's not just like, because everybody's so good at typing nowadays. Like it's like your brain can't even come up with ideas as fast as you want to type. So a lot of people get stuck.
That makes sense.
For that reason.
Yeah.
I think try to get it like a journal or a notebook, and your hand's probably going to hurt for the first time in a long time. I do that all the time. Every time I pick up a pen, I'm like, oh, I need to practice this more.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in high school again. But that's like, okay.
Don't we always feel like that?
Kind of, yeah. So that's like if you're writing from like a topic. Like if you've picked a topic, you know, like I said earlier, like, oh, I want to write this song about depression. But that's not always like the way that songwriting will present itself. Like sometimes you'll have like a really cool song title and you'll be like, wow, like now I want to write a song about this. And that in some ways is a lot harder. Yeah. Because like topics are very general, but like honestly, in my opinion, if you have the title already, you've already like done half the battle. Yeah. Because you've got your hook in most cases. Right. So you kind of already know whatever the rhythm of what you've come up with, whatever natural rhythm you say that in is probably how the song's kind of gonna kind of go. Yeah. There's going to be a way that you make the music kind of flow around the cadence of the words. Like if it's like surprise party, this is an awful example, but like how you say it, surprise party. So it's probably most likely going to be in like 4 or like a swung 6/8. Surprise party. Right. Surprise party. Surprise party. That's like so a like disco song. Yeah, sure. But you kind of already know, like, you know, from how you say that rhythm, how it's going to kind of go. So that's cool. But then coming up with the rest of the song is super hard, because especially in that example, and this is maybe a good example for this reason, but like how do you write a song about that without it being like super cheesy and awful? A party song? Yeah. So like unless it goes the complete opposite direction and it's like actually just like a really dark take on like you know, the surprise party that just like ruined your life. Ooh, yeah. Maybe like the song is called Surprise Party and the whole song's about like you killed somebody and you're trying to hide the body, and then you show up to your apartment and everybody's like, surprise! And you just have like a dead body in a bag and you're just like, everybody just caught me. Like all of my friends and family now see me. So maybe you better hope you have an October birthday. Maybe it's about that. Actually, there's a movie on Hulu, I think. Yeah. Hulu has, this is just a complete side story, but Hulu has this like horror series that they do, and there's this one you know, movie, the anthology series. Yeah, it's like an anthology. That's what I'm trying to say. And I forget what the title of it, but it's either like The Hitman or like The Body Bag or something like that. And it's basically this hitman who kills someone, and then it's like on Halloween, and then like all these things happen that just like make his circumstances like wilder and wilder, and he's just trying to like get rid of this body, but now like everyone thinks it's like his Halloween costume, and so he's like dragging this body through the streets and nobody's even looking, because it's just like it would be really easy to get away with a murder on Halloween. For sure. It's like, it's the decoration. Like that's pretty realistic. But yeah, I mean, that just shows like, you know, it's really fun to be creative. So that was an example of like how my brain works. So we went from surprise party to like dead body in a bag. And so like maybe that's what your song's about. Maybe it's a metal song and not a funk song. So there you go. Yeah. But you know, like that would actually be like a weird concept. I would try to finish a song
Honestly,
about that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
could just be like nerve-wracking and stressful and that whole thing. So like be open to how your brain works and be open to your ideas. But I know, Dustin, you were telling me, and I've noticed this with your songwriting, is you follow your melodies and lyrics and kind of everything follows whatever your main rhythm and like groove is. And I guess that's maybe because you're like a bass player. So that's
probably.
naturally what you think on.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you want to talk about that? Because that's definitely a different approach too. Like your lyric writing would be more rhythmic.
It is. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely rhythmic. Yeah. Like some of the songs, I definitely don't like do lead vocals a lot, in most situations, but there's like a couple songs that, my jam band Casual Cadenza plays that I wrote the lyrics, and melody for, two that I pretty much wrote, and then one that me and the, drummer Kyle kind of like co-wrote. But anyway, my lyrics definitely are more rhythmic focused, and like it doesn't mean that they're like always syncopated a very specific way, you know, like with the instrumentation, but a lot of it's like counter rhythm or something like that, off rhythms. I don't know how to describe it. Like lyrically, like, you know, just to talk on that too, I'm like, none of my lyrics tend to like tell a coherent story. Like
I mean, that's okay.
They're a little bit weird. They're maybe more like almost like Incubus, like
free poetry
kind of way. Yeah, it kind of is free poetry, which is like totally a way you can write, you know, and so it's because to me it's the melody and I know we've talked about this before, but the melody and the rhythm, like the instrumentation and then the interaction of that with the melody is what I pay attention to over lyrics like 99% of the time. Like if I'm listening to like hip hop, it's different because it is more about the lyrics and more about the rhythmic cadence. So I'm more focused on the lyrics there, but most of the time, like, yeah, I'm much more interested in just the melody,
right?
And how that weaves through it.
And I mean, that's super important because like if you think, I think this is a really good example of like rhythmic songwriting is, you know, that viral TikTok thing. I don't remember the name of the band and I feel bad for that, but it's the strut my stuff, strutting my stuff on over to you. I like your strut and you like mine too.
Okay.
So like the song's kind of a goobery song. Like it reminds me a little bit of like a Talking Heads kind of like
totally David
weird
Byrne thing.
yeah. But like it's super popular and viral right now. And so, and basically, I mean, that's just the rhythmic thing. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Like if you heard it on a snare drum, you would probably know immediately what song it is without the lyrics or anything. So
that's true. That's true.
So I think that's like a good example. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of ways to, you know, kind of write melodies and.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
It just popped into my mind one thing that I do sometimes, in addition to like the way I might rhythmically write, and this is whether it's, you know, just me or if I'm collaborating with other people, and that's something I think we should speak on too, collaboration. But before we get there, I sometimes if I'm like writing a song or have an idea and the chord progression is either for me just too generic for what I'm looking for, or it's just not hitting home. This is where like some theory knowledge really helps. And of course, you know, per the last episode, like, or, you know, a couple episodes ago, theory is not necessary to be a writer, to be creative. But, for me, I found it helpful where instead of playing, you know, for example, like, a 1-5-6-4, right? So like in the key of C major, for those listening, that's a C major, a G major, an A minor, and an F major chord. So maybe instead of playing those standard chords, I might play a chord that uses some of the same notes of the maybe the A minor chord. Like instead of playing an A minor, maybe I'll play like or sorry,
I mean, there's so many possibilities,
right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you could play an A major. I mean, that's just like dominant substitution right there. You can just play an A7. But what I might do is play like instead of C, G, A minor, F, I might do C, G, A minor, B flat, and use some of the notes of the B flat, because there's a B flat in the key of F, or in the chord of F, like,
Yeah.
you know, so there's like, well, there's not in the chord of F, but you get my point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
You know, like it offers a flat 7 substitution into the key that like just offers something a little bit different, but functionally the chord plays the same role. You know, it's just kind of like different. So
No,
I guess
I
my
do
point is
understand,
just
yeah.
like using a little bit of theory knowledge, you can choose a different chord progression, you know, that still works because like some of the notes carry over, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it almost kind of seems like common sense, but kind of what I was talking about earlier, where if you don't know how to play a musical instrument at all, like you can look up backing tracks and like really common chord progressions. But if you do know some music theory, like you can definitely use that to get more experimental with your songwriting.
Yeah.
And I think a good example of that would be like Radiohead.
Oh yeah.
Or like you were saying, Incubus.
Yeah.
Or Nirvana had some weird one. David Bowie.
Yeah.
Had a lot of like, oh, that was an interesting choice. Like I would never have thought to go there.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, even the, you know, overused the classic example of, but the Beatles, like,
Right.
you know, they did that all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
They were very creative with like some of their key changes and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, all of those are great examples of like, you know, if you are interested in writing some songs like that, it would really help. Go back and listen to our second episode about music theory and how it could be useful to you depending on your goals. But it would really help to learn an instrument, or even if it's just picking around on a piano. You don't even really have to know what you're doing exactly, but just having the ability to just play around with something could really help.
Yeah.
Use your ear to kind of guide you.
And piano is just like such a great instrument. I think anyone who's getting started in music for the first time should like play a piano.
Yeah, well, it's
and I've heard some
linear,
people-
which, you know, we'll talk about probably in a different episode, like in depth, because piano really is like, it's the easiest instrument to visualize basically music theory on. It's every concept is just linearly laid out.
Well,
so you don't have to
exactly.
You know.
And also like, you know, versus a guitar where if your left hand is like slightly off the fret in the wrong way, you won't get the note. But a piano, it's like press it down, bam, there's your note. You know, unless your piano's way out of tune. But
and
like,
guitar, you know, guitar has, you can guitar, bass, I mean violin, cello, any stringed instrument. There's multiple ways to play the same note in multiple places on that instrument.
Yeah.
So that makes everything way harder. Like on a piano, there's literally only one key that you can hit that's going to be that note in that octave. So, I mean, while that kind of does present some challenges, because say you're down here and the key one hits all the way over here.
Yeah.
But
people make it work.
You know, yeah, it happens all the time. So, but that would be a really good thing to just invest in. Like, don't spend a lot of money if this is your first, you know, get like a Casio entry level thing and just like beat around on it. And like, you're probably going to write melodies, even if you just one finger plays each key, you're going to probably come up with some melody. So that, I think that would be really useful to those who have no knowledge of music theory. I think that would be really, really helpful to you with songwriting as well.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this should be said. I think it's really important too to like listen to as much music as you can. Kind of open up your mind to like possibilities you may have not heard before. But also like I make it a point for myself to not listen to music while I'm actively in the process of writing a song. Because I kind of find like I start to kind of like go in that way of whatever song you're listening to and like mimic stuff that they're doing. And, you know, it just kind of, it's just introducing ideas to your unique creative process. So, you know, it's kind of hard for me. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree. Like, I think, you know, when I'm writing, I don't like to reference stuff too much. That said, if you're a little further along in the writing process, I think it actually starts to become a little more acceptable as you go, because the further you are into the song, I think the more like kind of committed you are to it. So like you're not going to change things as much. And like I guess what I'm trying to say is like if you start like laying down a demo and you are, especially, this is really I guess more of a thing, especially if you're collaborating, but even if you're not collaborating, pulling up a reference can be good if you're like, I want to get this kind of guitar tone, but I'm not really sure what to do. You can like pull it up, listen to it, and then like, you know, if you have some plugins or something, just like scroll through them until you find something that kind of fits the vibe, or, you know. So I think in that case, like a little bit of outside influence can be good, but you definitely have to be careful with it because it's super easy to accidentally steal a melody. I mean, I don't know if this was accidental or not, but you know, I think it Robin Thicke who was in like a lawsuit with the Petty estate.
No, it was Marvin Gaye.
It was Marvin Gaye. Right. Okay. Yeah, for
Blurred Lines.
Blurred Lines. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was, you know,
there was somebody else that was in something with Petty though.
Sam Smith.
Sam Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really easy to like just transform whatever you're on to exactly what that is when you listen to other music. But I mean, we've done it before, like and it's more for like finding tones and like specific like guitar parts or bass parts. You know, we've referenced stuff, but I don't think I wouldn't like recommend to like, while you're trying to write a song, just like listen to what this person did and try to make it just like that.
Oh no, that's actually kind of like a pet peeve. If I'm like writing with somebody and then they're like, oh, but how about this song? And then they pull up like 6 different examples every couple minutes, and it's like, dude, now the flow is fucked.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. So, you know, to each their own, but it definitely doesn't work for me. You know, I think too, just kind of going with like familiarizing yourself with the musical part of it. I think it's really important for the lyrical part of it to really try to, this is going to sound obvious, but really familiarize yourself with language and skill. And when you go into the music theory part of it, when you can blend those together, like understanding like phonetics and how language rhythms work, and then you can apply that to like musical rhythms, that's like really kind of steps up the whole process, you know. Because it's one of the, and it's not really a pet peeve because I like songs that don't do it, but it is really common to hear like, I guess these lyrics don't flow over this what's being played, and that's basically what like a common non-musical person would describe it as, probably, is just like there's no flow here, but there's probably more to it than that, kind of going into music theory a little bit more. So just familiarizing yourself with not only music theory but also just the language itself. So like stresses are huge in, you know, writing lyrics, like where you put the emphasis, and that, you know, that's kind of more of like an advanced melody writing thing that I remember going over in school, is like, if it feels weird to say it on an accent, don't put it on the one.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, if it feels weird to just speak it and be like, I'm from Boise, Idaho. Like, maybe don't put C on the one, you know, or like the accented B. It doesn't have to be the one, but usually that is like the most accented B. So just, you know, knowing kind of that kind of stuff, or like how many syllables can I fit into this rhythm before it just sounds like
like you're forcing something. Yeah, totally.
In forms of speech, like being able to get kind of more advanced and creative with just how you present a thought, how you say something. That's, you know, kind of a more advanced lyric writing. All of it is, but it's really important, you know, and the more you progress, it would kind of become probably more common in your writing. I doubt your first song's probably going to have tons of problems. It's your first song. My first song definitely had a lot of problems. Going back and listening to it, I'm like, but yeah, I'm just like, it's not great.
Well, would you say I mean, I this is what I think, so I don't know, but my favorite at least as people, as far as what I know about them, my favorite lyricists, like you and Dylan, are some of my favorite lyricists. I love the way you both write, and you're totally different in how you write. But,
Dylan's awesome.
You're both such great. Dylan Hansen, Gamma Star, check it out.
Shout out.
But yeah, you guys are both like readers too. Like you both like to read books.
Yeah.
And just read in general. I feel like, you know, like that kind of coincides with writing. It's like usually the better musicians are the ones who listen to a lot of music, a lot of different types of music. Doesn't mean they're listening to it all day, every day. And doesn't mean you're reading all day, every day. But, you know, people who read tend to just have a bigger vocabulary and a bigger phrasing vocabulary too. So not just like the words they choose, but how they phrase words and how they construct sentences and you know, things like that. So I think if you are wanting to be a better lyricist, and it's like really a desire you have, like you need to read more. You know, and it doesn't matter what you read necessarily, unless it's like tabloids. But you know,
I mean, even that could be
probably
interesting.
make you a great pop songwriter. But I think, if you want to have like some depth, like read stuff that has depth to you. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be fictional or nonfiction, but you know.
I think for me too, like, and this is just kind of my personality, but like I try to also read like classics and like poetry, which kind of is like a trendy, like hipster thing, but like it really is different because language has changed so much. So, you know, like reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac, like how they talked in the 1950s and 40s is going to be totally different than, you know, anything that you could hear today come out of somebody's mouth. So just kind of like, you know, be experimental with that part too. Probably one of the strangest things that I've ever gotten, because I always get books for Christmas. That's like what everybody gets me, like my family. So one year my sister got me like this Jim Morrison poetry book. It was called like The Lord of the something. I don't remember. It's probably one of the only ones. So.
Lord of the Rings? That's J.R.R. Tolkien.
No, it was like The Lord of the rock and roll or something like that. I don't remember. That's not right. But, you know, like Jim Morrison had some like weird freeform poetry. Like, so even with that, like while you're reading poetry, like trying to like dissect it, like, ooh, well, what do they mean when they say like this, you know, and you could look at it on surface level, but usually there's like some metaphor or something there that can be really helpful when you go to write your own stuff. Cause you're like, well, I remember this one time, you know, I read this thing that was this metaphor, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, just kind of being more analytical in everything is going to make you a better lyricist. And probably musician too, but definitely lyricist. So, I mean, you know, I think it's really important to just be patient with yourself. Try to make a habit out of it. Be open, especially if you're writing with others. Be huge. Open to ideas. Like, try not to get like stuck in like what you think it should be. Like, it could turn into something new and fresh because you listen to what somebody else wants to say, which is that should be the goal, is to be new and fresh. Like, you don't want to just like be like Radiohead Part 2, you know, like, you know,
for sure.
They're bringing in all of their influences and stuff. So,
and I mean, we could do a whole episode on how to songwrite and collaborate with other people, because there's a lot that goes into that, I think. But
we should,
you know, we should. But but yeah, you're right. I think you know, just to touch the surface there, like, you know, being open-minded. I used to struggle with that a little bit when I was younger, and in the sense that like if somebody didn't necessarily like the way I was doing something or thought it should be slightly different, like it used to feel a little more personal. And I think that's just kind of like something you
growing up.
It's growing up, right? I mean, it could be music, it could be, you know, how you make your grilled cheese sandwiches, you know.
I still sometimes get my feelings hurt if somebody's like
doesn't like a part.
But like, I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I think it's delivery too. It's like how the person says it. So like there's a two-way street, right?
Sure.
Like, you need to be receptive to what your bandmates think, because, you know, sometimes they may not be able to articulate exactly what they mean, especially if they don't know theory or they don't know, you know, your reference points. But at the same time, I think if you're going to deliver an idea to somebody, if you're going to criticize an idea, like there is a right and a wrong way to do it. So,
of course,
you know,
and I mean, this is an example that I've thought about before because I've, just kind of self-reflective, but I've thought like if I was in the session or whatever where like Coltrane brought in Giant Steps, I would probably be like, I don't know, John, like this is a lot. Like you're kind of all over the place. Like I don't really feel like the melody is very like voice led. You're just kind of like jumping fifths everywhere. Like, it doesn't really, it doesn't sound like anything else you've ever heard.
Yeah.
So I would probably shoot it down. And now I'm like,
damn.
Yeah.
No,
but,
totally,
like
totally.
I mean, I think most people get it. It's just like having a relationship with anybody else. Like you have to respect their opinions, their perspective, their ideas, their likes and dislikes. And if they're really passionate about something, like give it a second chance. Like don't just like dismiss them and move on, because that does create resentment with anybody. I mean, that's just normal human stuff.
Yeah.
So, just try to think of it as a relationship when you're writing songs with somebody. So be open to their ideas, but also don't be afraid to like experiment yourself. Like if they pose an idea, even if you hate it at first, just kind of go down the trail for a minute. And just see what happens. And if you're like, I don't know, like this is getting kind of weird, this is not where I thought it would be, saying it like that, I mean, it depends on the person, but like I wouldn't get offended by that. I mean, like, okay, yeah. I mean, I could see that. It got totally in a different direction than I was moving. And I've been told that several times, writing with other people. Yeah.
It's just
like,
part of the process.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, what if we went to like this diminished chord? And they were like, I wasn't really planning on getting that weird, I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, I respect that.
That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else that you want to add to that? Even if it's just collaboration, like just being open-minded.
I mean, yeah, I think the key is being open-minded, being kind, being receptive, and well, that's open-minded, and being honest, actually, I guess is the other thing. Like if you're really not vibing with something, like don't just say, yeah, that's fine, just to make somebody else happy. Because if it is a collaboration, then it's, as you said, it's like a relationship. It's like having a kid, it's like a little mini kid that doesn't need to be fed or taken care of in that way. But, it's like, it's something you both contributed toward and something you both care about. So like, you should definitely not like hide your feelings, but, do it respectfully.
I think it matters too. Like if it's been mostly the other person's idea, like they do, in my opinion, kind of get more of a say. If it was their song that they brought to the table. Yes. You can't just like be like, well, I don't like this part and like this is garbage. You do have to kind of like, songs are like extensions of your personality, and I mean they're your creations, so people do get like really emotionally attached to them, rightfully so. So just enter it with an open mind, stay open and experimental. But respect is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Like respect the other person. But even when you're writing alone, like just kind of like respect the process.
Yeah, definitely respect the process. For sure. I mean, that's like, probably the most important thing.
Yeah, and it may change, even if you're writing by yourself. Like 3 months later, you may listen back to it or like look back at it and be like, I'm going to change this one thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
It's totally fine. Right.
Yeah.
You mentioning, talking about the collaboration thing and communicating as well, like communicating your feelings on something, and then you mentioning that if it's somebody else's origin idea, that you kind of have to offer that respect of like, hey, it is their song. I think if you're going to offer a criticism to anything, like be ready to explain it. Because one thing that I really dislike in songwriting sessions is when somebody says they don't like something, and then you ask, well, okay, well, what do you not like? No, I don't know, I just don't like it. Yeah, like that's all right. Well, that's not enough. Like I get, like I'm not saying it's not a valid point, because sometimes I just don't like something as well, but I try to examine it and like figure it out, is it me, or is there really something that's not working, because sometimes it can just be maybe your taste isn't used to it, like a quick side thing, I remember when I was younger, and you had like in high school, you had like the hardcore like rock and metal kids, and then you had like the hardcore like hip hop kids, and they would always be like, man, like, the other's genre is terrible. But then like if you listen to them, like if you listen to like heavy metal, like breakdowns are just like trap beats.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And there's not a lot of singing vocals in like hardcore metal. It's screaming, and screaming is just a really loud like version of rapping.
Totally.
Almost,
yeah. Especially when you get into like Attila, that is scream rapping.
It is. Yeah,
like,
exactly. So, like you may think that you don't like something, but then realize like there's actually so much commonality between the thing you really like and the thing you think you don't like, that what you really need to do is take the time to examine the aspects that you do like about it, and take that and, put it into your music or whatever.
I mean, I think it kind of boils down, kind of like I was saying, like think of it as a relationship, like work on your communication skills.
Yeah.
Because how you communicate an idea can immediately make somebody receptive to that idea or dismissive of that idea. So, work on how you say things.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, and I promise in that process, you're going to communicate lyrics and everything better. Because you're just going to be more introspective and reflective. And well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sex, Drugs, and Disappointment. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave us a review and connect with us more on Instagram and TikTok at SDD Podcast. Each episode is also available in video format on YouTube. And don't forget,
have fun, don't do too much, and it's gonna happen.
Sex,